All right, let's bring in our panel. Good panel tonight. Florida Congressman Gaetz, Steve Hilton, host of The Next Revolution, and Richard Goodstein, Democratic strategist and former campaign advisor to Bill and Hillary Clinton. Gentlemen, great to have all of you here. Richard, let me start with you. Obviously, that was a win today for the president. The economy is very strong. A lot of people thought we were headed towards a recession, but it doesn't appear to be coming anytime soon.
Yeah, I have to give the president credit. The 3.2 number is a lot better than the 2.2 of his first year and 2.9 of his second year. Not quite what he promised during the campaign, which was 4, and as he put it, maybe 5 or 6, but we'll take 3.2. The job number is kind of on a trend line that he inherited from Obama, and it's great that it's still going down. And the question is, when he says, is America great again? Again, relative to what? I think that's what a lot of people are kind of worrying, is that when blacks and women didn't have the rights that they have now, that's always been from day one the problem with his slogan and keeping up with some of his promises about the wall and Mexico building and so forth that he hasn't quite delivered on. That's where I think he might be leaving some people short. But hats off to him on the number. Okay.
Let's take a look at the most recent Fox poll. If it were to be Biden versus Trump, it has Joe Biden at +7, President Trump at 40% in this poll. Matt Gaetz, given what we laid out here in the introduction, what do you think?
National polls don't worry me at all. The numbers that mean the most to me are that we've got nearly 5 million people who are off of food stamps since President Trump was elected, more than 5.5 million jobs created, more than 8 months of 3% year-over-year wage growth, which means bigger paychecks for the American people. And Martha, the reason we're seeing this unexpected roaring Trump economy in the first quarter of this year is because we've got consumers spending money. This is a direct consequence of President Trump's policies. This is not an accident. When you put more money in people's pocket as a result of tax cuts, they can be more optimistic about their future. They can spend that money. And as Larry Kudlow put it, we are now in a prosperity cycle where our success is breeding even more success. Too much more, Martha, and I'm going to be tired of winning.
All right. All right, Steve Hilton, that's as I laid it out, that's the question for Joe Biden, right? You have a lot of these candidates who are much further to the left than Joe Biden, who have different ways of looking at the economy. They want to redistribute wealth. But that's not the world that Joe Biden has lived in the past. He's going to go to the Rust Belt and try to convince these families and these workers and these people who live there that he can make their economic situation even better than it is now. How do you think he's going to sell that argument?
I think he's going to try and present himself, as he always has, as this champion of the middle class. But his record is completely the opposite. And just to give a quick plug, Martha, on my show on Sunday night, we'll be laying out the facts there. I mean, he talked about having no whiff of scandal during his time in the White House as vice president. His whole career has been scandal. He is the ultimate insider. And I think this is the crucial point to understand about the election. I think it's not so much about left or right. It's still about the insider versus the outsider. And President Trump, even though he's in the White House, is still the ultimate outsider. That's how he acts every single day. Joe Biden is the ultimate insider. That's what people wanted to change from in 2016. They still want that change. And the idea that they're going to vote for the ultimate insider, the ultimate swamp creature, it's not real.
And you know who's going to make that argument, Richard, is Bernie Sanders. He's a senator, obviously, but he's going to make that argument. Pete Buttigieg is going to make that argument. They're going to look at Joe Biden. It's going to get nasty, as the president predicted, and as I think everybody knows. Yeah. All of these folks are going to point the finger at Joe Biden and go, he's from the swamp, he's old news, and we are the way forward.
Well, if that's what you want to say about the person who was the vice president to a highly successful President Obama, and look, the fact of the matter is, if I were the Trump White House, I'd be scared to death that as good as the economy is, and Matt laid out the case for it, in Michigan, in Wisconsin, in Pennsylvania, in all of those swing states, Biden beats Trump by 8 to 10 points today. And you tell me a year from now, is the economy going to be stronger or weaker? I think most economists aren't particularly enthusiastic that we're going to hit that 4 or 5% that Donald Trump promised. Will it be nasty between Bernie Sanders and the others and Biden? Yes, and he's a big boy. He's been around this track before.
All right, it's a good point. Richard makes a good point, Matt. And, there are reports that this is the candidate that the Trump folks are the most concerned about for exactly that reason. When you look at the polling in those states and you look at the history that Joe Biden has with those voters, it's a legitimate point.
I'm pretty optimistic when I look at the history that Joe Biden has with primary voting Democrats in presidential contests. It's not as if the sample size is small. Joe's run for president a few times before, and there's a reason why Democrats haven't picked him. I don't think that his floor is a lot different than his ceiling in the polling, because I don't think a lot of people are waiting around to learn something new about Joe Biden. I think he is where he is, and he's likely to be overtaken in the primary. But whoever comes out of the Democratic primary, prosperity is a hard thing to campaign against. And if you look at the expectations of the economy before the 2016 election, we thought we'd be at 1.6, 1.7% growth right now. Not only is the Trump economy beating the Obama-era projections, it's doubling them up and lapping them. And I think when we get the chance to make that case in the Rust Belt and the places where we've seen a lot of the economic progress from manufacturing, we'll be real strong in the areas that'll deliver President Trump re-election.
This is just one person's opinion. Chris Cillizza on CNN. You know, there was a lot of examples of this in the media, Richard, today of people going after Joe Biden, perhaps not satisfied and not wanting him to be the guy. Here's just one example. Let's play it.
But one thing Donald Trump is right about when he attacks Joe Biden, he's never really shown the quality of candidate that we expected him to be in either of those races.
Which goes to the point, Richard, how excited are, and you know, the money came in a big way today, and the polls look good for Joe Biden, and you know, so I need to lay that down first. But how much enthusiasm do you think there is in the Republican Party for him to be the guy, for him to be the
Democratic Party? Yeah. Look, I think this will be the key question, which is it excitement versus some better prospect of winning? And if you look at the polls right now, Biden clearly stands a better chance and actually beats Trump rather handily. Does that stand a test of time? Who knows? But I think if you're the Democrat and your primary objective is not to be excited or not even a particular policy outcome, you kind of know from Biden's work with Obama about where you're going to go policy-wise, and Democrats pretty happy with that. But Biden seems to give you the best chance of beating Trump, and that,
which is clearly what, yeah, the polls tell us that's what Democrats want more than anything.
Everything else.
Well, one more poll I want to put up because I thought this was interesting, and the question is, are you totally enthusiastic, comfortable with a candidate who is? 87% said yes, totally comfortable with African-American candidate. And then you go down the list here. Woman candidate, 84%. Gay, lesbian, 68% say they're fine, comfortable with that attribute for a candidate. But over 75, only 37% say that they feel totally enthusiastic and comfortable with that. Steve, what do you think about that?
Well, I think that the proof of the pudding is in the eating. Like Bernie Sanders is just as old and just as white and just as male as Biden and so on, and he's got a lot of enthusiasm behind him in the primary, at least. And I think in the end, it comes down to ideas and the kind of gut feeling they have about where you want to take the country. Now, what Biden is saying very clearly is he wants to go back. He wants to take America back to the pre-Trump era. Now, the pre-Trump era, and looking at those battleground states and the blue-collar workers we're talking about, for them, the pre-Trump era was wage stagnation. That's what's changed. You've got the lower income groups benefiting the most from the Trump boom, and that's going to be decisive.
I got to go, so I'm giving Steve the last word this time. Gentlemen, thank you. Richard, thank you. Matt, thank you. Great to see you guys.
Thank you.